Hey everybody, welcome back to the Financial Freedom Show. My name is Rob Berger. In this video, I want to compare two portfolios for you. We're going to look at two portfolios to see which one has performed better over the last decade or so. What are the two portfolios? Well, we're going to stack up the Betterment Core Portfolio to a three-fund portfolio. Now, if you're not familiar, Betterment is what's referred to as a robo-advisor. It's an automated investment service. I've been doing a deep dive into robo-advisors and doing a lot of analysis that I'll share with you in a future video. But what I did was I took the Betterment Core Portfolio, which I'll show you in just a minute, and it includes 10 ETFs, and I've put it side by side our simple three-fund portfolio to see, how they perform. So let me show you what I did. This is Betterment, and it offers actually a number of different portfolios. You can see some of them if we scroll down here. They have some socially responsible portfolios. They have some focused on technology. The one I focused on is just what they call their sort of core portfolio. And here's what it looks like. This was actually based on my age. And so Betterment recommended 78% in stocks, 22% in bonds. I, of course, could change that if I wanted to, and if I were going to use Betterment, which I don't. But I could change that. But we'll stick with what they've recommended. And here are the 10 funds. They actually set out the specific funds. These are all ETFs, a lot of Vanguard ETFs, and the percentages for each. And it includes 4 funds that focus on U.S. stocks, 2 funds here, VEA and VWO, that focus on international stocks. And then they use actually 4 funds for their bonds, a TIPS fund, this is sort of a U.S. total bond fund, and then 2 for international bonds. So that's the Betterment Core Portfolio. And what I did was I entered that portfolio into Portfolio Visualizer. You can see it here. This is Portfolio 1. And then I used here the three-fund portfolio. Now, when you're comparing portfolios, it's really important to get 2 things right. The first is you want to make sure you're comparing portfolios that have the same stock to bond allocation. So that's why here for VBMFX, which is a Vanguard Total Bond Index mutual fund, I have it set at 22%, which more or less mirrors the Betterment Core Portfolio. The second thing you want to make sure you get right is the allocation between U.S. stocks and international stocks. So again, for the three-fund portfolio, it uses just the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund, and I've got it set at 43.8%, which roughly corresponds to the U.S. stock allocation in the Betterment Core Portfolio, and then a little over 34% for the international stocks. So there you go. When we analyze these portfolios, and I should briefly add, what I set up here was a starting amount of $10,000 and then contributing $250 a month. That's what I did to kind of compare the two portfolios. When we compare them, it goes back about 8 years. 2014 to 2022. It's limited to that point in time because of the data, in this case, the Portfolio Visualizer has on the ETF BNDX. But that's fine. It gives us 8 years of data. And here's the Betterment Core Portfolio, again, 10 ETFs. And here's our simple three-fund portfolio. All right, enough chit-chat. How did they compare? Well, here are the numbers. As you can see, they both were very comparable. But the Boglehead three-fund portfolio actually outperformed by, what is that? About $800, $900. You can see the compound annual growth rates here. And you can also see the standard deviation. It's interesting. The standard deviation is actually a tad higher for the Betterment Core Portfolio. Again, this is only over 8 years, but still, I think the data is interesting. Now, one of the things that this does not factor in are the fees that Betterment charges. So in this case, the fees of the underlying ETFs are already incorporated in these results. But in addition to that, Betterment charges a fee of 25 basis points. That's 1/4 of 1%. Now, as fees go, that's actually, I think, very reasonable. And in fact, when I've helped friends and family start investing for the first time, many of them choose Betterment. And I think it's a very reasonable approach if you're wanting help. However, as longtime listeners of this channel know, fees matter. And even if we're going to pay the fees to get some help, we ought to understand the impact of those fees before we make that decision. We can model that in Portfolio Visualizer. So I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to click this shared fee structure. I'm going to actually set that to no. What that allows me to do is for Portfolio 1, the Betterment portfolio, to set it up for what a fee structure that I created. I simply called it Betterment, and it's simply 25 basis points. And for the 3-fund portfolio, we're not going to have any extra fees. We're going to assume that we created that and manage it on our own. So how does that analysis change? Well, before we hit the analysis button, let's just refresh our memory on the numbers. The Boglehead number is not going to change, right? Because we haven't added any fees to it. But let's watch what happens to the Betterment Core portfolio. It's currently at $55,500. We analyze it with fees. That 55.5 drops to 54.7. So is it a massive drop? No. But over 8 years, it did cost us about $800. Again, that may be worth it to us if we want the help that Betterment offers, like automated rebalancing, tax loss harvesting, if you have taxable accounts. I will admit, a pretty good user interface, but fees do matter, and I wanted to show you that. So at least over the last 8 years, with or without the Betterment fee, the Boglehead 3-fund portfolio has slightly outperformed the Betterment Core portfolio. So what are the takeaways from this? Well, the first is, I think, the Betterment Core portfolio, I think, is a solid portfolio. It's done well over the last 8 years. Yes, it's slightly underperformed a 3-fund portfolio, but I think it's done reasonably well. That's the first thing. The second thing is our 3-fund portfolio, it's done great too. It seems so simple. It almost seems like, it's not sophisticated. It's just 3 mutual funds or 3 ETFs. But in fact, it is a solid portfolio. You could literally invest millions, I'll say tens of millions of dollars, if you had that kind of money, in a 3-fund portfolio, and you do, I think, really well. The next thing, though, I think we need to keep in mind is that while the 3-fund portfolio has slightly outperformed the Betterment Core portfolio over the last 8 years, there's no guarantee that it will do the same over, say, the next eight years or whatever period of time you're investing. I think they'll probably have similar performances over the long term. The one thing I'll show you about the Betterment portfolio is that it does have a focus on value ETFs. You see that here. VTV is a Vanguard Value Fund. VOE is a Vanguard Mid-Cap Value Fund. VBR is a Vanguard Small Cap Value Fund. Why am I pointing that out? Well, over the last 8 years, value stocks have generally underperformed growth stocks, which could explain why the Betterment Core portfolio has slightly underperformed a comparable 3-fund portfolio. Some think that that's changing, particularly as we go into a period of inflation, perhaps higher interest rates, that maybe value stocks could outperform growth stocks for some period of time in the future. If that were to happen, I suspect maybe the Betterment Core portfolio would slightly outperform the Boglehead 3-fund portfolio. That's my view anyway. So at the end of the day, I think both of these portfolios are reasonable. Of course, I love the 3-fund portfolio. I like the Betterment Core portfolio as well. You could, by the way, implement that on your own. You don't need Betterment to do that, but keep in mind you'd be juggling the rebalancing of 10 different ETFs. Plus, if you're doing it inside of a 401k, it's very likely you won't have all of those investment options available to you. So there you go. That's Betterment versus the 3-fund portfolio. Hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll be happy to help you out any way I can. And until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.